That's right. You're listening to another episode of the Co-Main Event Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. I'm Chad Dundas. That's Ben Folks. We're both longtime MMA journalists, and for the last 13 years, we've been meeting here every week to break down all the action in the wild, weird, and occasionally wonderful world of mixed martial arts. Then we went down to Atlanta, Georgia over the weekend, State Farm Arena, the granddaddy of them all, for this UFC on ESPN event. Kamaru Usman with a big comeback win over Joaquin Buckley in the welterweight division. So we're going to spend, I think, the first part of this show talking about that, talking about this win for Kamaru Usman, what it means for him, maybe what it means a little bit for Joaquin Buckley. Then we'll get into listener mail the bottom of the hour, and then the second half of the show we will look ahead to this weekend when the UFC heads over to Baku, Azerbaijan. Am I saying that right? Azerbaijan.
I feel like there's zero chance that either of us are ever going to say it correctly.
Azerbaijan. I'm gonna go with that. Just phonetic, straight phonetic with it.
It just feels like we are all agreeing to approximate something reasonably close. And we're all just going to, by the time we get it figured out, the UFC will have moved on. So don't beat yourself up about this one, is what I'm saying.
Okay, well, we're going to do our best, as we always do, here on the Co-Main Event Podcast. Ben, Kamaru Usman, 38 years old, the former champion, longtime 170-pound champion, widely recognized, agreed upon as one of the all-time greats in this division. However, he came into this fight on Saturday against Joaquin Buckley, having not won a fight since 2021. He was on a 3-fight skid, losing twice to Leon Edwards. The first one of those cost him his title. The second one was the do-over for Leon Edwards, the prove it shot, like we're out on the basketball court playing horse. And then he rolled into the Khamzat Chimaev fight at middleweight in October of 2023, lost that one by majority decision. So, all that being said, I don't know that hopes were particularly high for Kamaru Usman heading into this fight against Joaquin Buckley, who had been on a roll since coming back to welterweight back in 2023. He had won 6 fights in a row, including sort of an escalating ladder of opponents in Vicente Luque, Stephen the Wonder Man Thompson, and then Colby Covington last December. Joaquin Buckley was the betting favorite. This was seen as another in a string of fights where the UFC seems to be trying to feed the old heads to the young lions.
Especially at welterweight.
And Kamaru Usman came out this weekend and said, "Not so fast, motherfucker." He put on sort of a vintage Kamaru Usman performance, at least for 4 rounds here.
Yeah, he also seemed to exploit one sizable hole in Joaquin Buckley's game that he found early on, that he probably suspected was there. And, if you know anything about Kamaru Usman's preferred fighting style, hoped was there. And sure enough, it was. Sure enough, the guy couldn't stop a goddamn takedown to save his life. And then once down, couldn't get up. And that was really all Kamaru Usman needed. Because, it's like the first takedown he got in this fight in the first round, I was like, okay, that was good. That was well-timed, shot in there at just the right time, just the right distance, and then was able to keep Joaquin Buckley down for basically the rest of the round and just sort of chip away at him. And then I think it was in the second round where he got a takedown from way far out. Not really set up super well at all, just shot from too far, frankly. It's not supposed to be able to work when you're shooting from that far with no real setup. And he got that too, and also managed to hold him down. And that's when I kind of went, well, I think we've seen what we need to see here. And really, I don't think it was until the 5th round that Joaquin Buckley stopped the takedown attempt. And then, he started to be able to get loose a little bit with his striking, but you could see at moments where Kamaru Usman looked vulnerable on the feet there. There were a couple moments where he did look a little bit slow and a little bit late 30s-ish. But by then, he had built up so much a lead on the scorecards, all he had to do was just not lose. Just don't get knocked out, and you're going to win it on by the judges. And it just seemed like I couldn't tell coming away with this one. Obviously, it's going to be an emotional win for Kamaru Usman. You know, you could understand why, because not a whole lot of people were believing in him. It's been a little while since he won a fight. He can do the math on this the same way the rest of us can. He's been in the sport long enough to know when they match you up against this young fella on a winning streak, they think he's the future and you are the past. And so to win that one and sort of hold back the tides of time a little bit, I can understand how that's definitely got to be emotional. I also came away from this, though, kind of asking myself, was Kamaru Usman that good, or was Joaquin Buckley that limited, at least in this one regard? Was he just too open to that particular approach that he allowed Kamaru Usman, a guy who you kind of know what he wants to do, to come in there and do it to you? Like, I couldn't tell what exactly to make, especially because when Kamaru Usman started doing the thing again afterwards, Chad, where he started talking about like a title shot's got to be next. And I felt like I was going crazy, Chad. I was like, I understand it's a big win. You're happy. You know, we all thought you were going to lose, all that kind of stuff. But my man, you've won one fight. Like in the past 4 years, this is the first fight you've won in the last like 4 outings. That ain't title shot shit, man. And especially like when you went in there, you took a guy down, you held him there, you cut him open with some elbows. You were working while you're on there. But I don't know if any of this was real title shot shit, as much as Kamaru Usman might want it to be.
Not right away. I mean, that's not going to happen.
But he's saying he's sitting around waiting.
Yeah, he's not the matchmaker. Kamaru Usman doesn't get to choose, and he doesn't have a lot of time to sit around and wait either. I don't think this one win gets him a title shot, even in this kind of new look welterweight division where you got a new champion that is perhaps even as even more unproven than the old champion, who now is going to fight the lightweight champion who's moving up. If that's what Kamaru Usman wants to do, he's in for a long wait. And I don't think he has the luxury of doing that, especially when, you can make the case there's at least one more guy in front of him after Islam Makhachev and Jack Della Maddalena do the damn thing. So you're going to have to see Kamaru Usman fight at least one more time before we start thinking about him for a title shot, I would say. However, don't you think it's a little unfair to sit over there and say, well, Kamaru Usman only did one thing. Like, he only exploited this one weakness in Joaquin Buckley's game. And if Joaquin Buckley is, maybe he's just that bad, but like, that's the thing Kamaru Usman does, man. Like, we wouldn't sit here and say that about George St. Pierre, right? If George St. Pierre came out and had this win against Joaquin Buckley, obviously not now because George St. Pierre is out of the game, but at the similar stage that Kamaru Usman was at, if George St. Pierre came out and did this to Joaquin Buckley, we'd be like, that's George St. Pierre, all right, that's his game, that's what he's going to do. So I'm not going to shortchange Kamaru Usman just because he got the takedowns. Like, that's Kamaru Usman's game, man. And frankly, you can't be surprised by that if you're Joaquin Buckley, right? Like,
that's what I'm kind of saying. Like, I can't understand if you were going back to the corner afterwards being like, damn, I didn't expect he was going to be just so committed to getting the takedown. I'm like, brother, what do you think he's going to do? He had some moment. He looked all right striking on the feet, but like, that was where Joaquin Buckley was finding success. The takedowns were as much to take that away from him as they were to make him think about that and make him limit how much output he was willing to throw out. But like, that's how do you not have a better answer for how to get up? Because you got to know against Kamaru Usman, if you don't knock him out early, probably you're going to have to get up from at least a takedown or two. And he just had nothing there.
Yeah. Well, Dominic Cruz will build a hypothesis on commentary. He will do that. He'll come up with a potential storyline, hypothesis, explanation for what he sees in front of him. And in this one, he brought up multiple times the question of what Joaquin Buckley was doing in training, and basically said he doesn't look like a guy who has had to work his way out of these positions very much in training.
Which kind of accused him of being the best guy in his own room.
Yeah, he kind of did. And in this case, I did wonder about that after hearing Dominic Cruz bring it up, just because I mean, I guess in fairness, Kamaru Usman is really, really, really good at what he does. And we've seen him do this to a lot of people in the past. So maybe it's not such an indictment of Joaquin Buckley's training as we want to make it out to be. But it did seem that way when Dominic Cruz brought that up. Like, it didn't seem like Joaquin Buckley had spent a lot of time there or had spent a lot of time working his way out of that. And it seems kind of inconceivable to me that you go into a training camp against Kamaru Usman with a strategy of basically like, well, I stuff the takedown and then I'll be fine, right? Because you're not going to do that every time.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially that his ability to stuff some of those takedowns. Like Dominic Cruz did point out correctly at one point, I thought, where Kamaru Usman was going for a single leg and Joaquin Buckley was trying to punch him instead of working on his defense. And you're just like, okay, you're right about that. That is not a great sign, especially when at that point in the fight, the takedowns have been your entire problem. And that did kind of make me wonder, like, what did you think this was going to be like? And yet I see your point about the GSP comparison. We're like, hey, if GSP had come in here and done this, would have been like, that's the shit that the guy does. But it is just a little tough for me when he comes out of this having won this one fight and then is talking as if it's the obvious choice to have him fight for a title. Here's his quote afterwards. Let's be honest. I'm the biggest in the division. This is about entertainment. I'm going to pause. I'm going to pause for effect.
Yeah.
The UFC is an entertainment company. You want to make the biggest fights. It's going to be the winner of JDM and Islam. If Islam pulls that one out, former pound for pound versus current pound for pound, who doesn't pay for that? A lot of people, man. You'll to paraphrase Chad Dundas, you will be astounded by how many people will not pay for that. That, like, you got to do this, I guess. You got to be the guy to come out here and like try to call your shot so that you give yourself a chance to decide what's next instead of letting everybody else decide for you. But to come out of this one being like, well, obviously, you got so many interesting dudes in the welterweight division right now, and to be like, I should clearly get the next title shot, the winner of this super fight, because it's all about entertainment. And people are going, I don't know, man. Like, even at your peak, I don't know if entertainment was the biggest thing you had to offer. And especially when it's in contrast to, he comes out of this fight, wins it, Bilal Muhammad is like, all right, finally time, me and you, let's do this shit. And he's just like, no way, man, I'm fighting for a title next. Like, you're too good to fight the last guy to have the title when you had the title, years ago at this point. You're trying to act like, no, there's no way I would dream of fighting Bilal Muhammad, who was just recently the champion. Like, no, that is a fight that makes sense for everybody, makes sense on a few different levels. And to act like, no, I'm sitting around here waiting for a title shot when they have all these other guys to choose from seems to me delusional.
Oh, a little bit, yeah, but he's also not alone in this sport, right? As you said, like, you got to go out there and at least try to speak into being the thing you want. I was going to save this for listener mail, but we might as well get to it now. From Christian Rader on Patreon, he wrote in to say, so this weekend's fight night had a lot of sparring matches on it, but had a great main event that the card really didn't deserve. Despite his knees no longer being present on our plane of existence, Kamaru Usman put on a classic performance against a game Buckley. The performance was so vintage that Usman almost let his opponent make a comeback in the 5th round. I think having Usman back shakes up the welterweight division in a really interesting way, with potential matches against Brady, that boy good Rachmanov, or Whispers, Ian Machado. Gary, are you fellas excited for Usman to be back? Who do you want to see him fight next? I agree a little bit with this, because I think it is somewhat exciting to have the former champion, back in the mix in a way that I guess we just weren't giving him credit for prior to this win. He still came into this fight ranked number 5 in the welterweight division. So maybe that says more about the UFC rankings than it does about Kamaru Usman, but he was still considered in that top group of fighters. And now for him to get this win, I do think is somewhat exciting and somewhat important for welterweight because he's not going to get that title shot, man. And you look above him, with the exception of Leon Edwards, who I don't know that we need to see Kamaru Usman fight him again, at least for a good bit. You do have Shavkat Rakhmonov, you do have Sean Brady, you do have Bilal Muhammad, and of course you do have Ian Gary hanging out there at number 6. And that's several good matchups for Kamaru Usman if we want to make him. If we can convince him not to sit around at 38 years old and wait for a title shot, I would watch Kamaru Usman fight any one of those guys and would view it as a good test for the up and coming challenger and a good test for Kamaru Usman to see what he has left in the tank. Like, honestly, it's possible that somebody like Sean Brady makes the most sense for Kamaru Usman. Brady's coming off a 3-fight win streak. He just beat Leon Edwards in March. And so if I was sitting around making matches, that might be the one I would think about, even though maybe it doesn't pack quite the punch at the box office as a Shavkat Rakhmonov fight or a Bilal Muhammad fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think welterweight is really interesting right now, in large part because it feels like kind of anybody's ball game, and you have enough interesting people who offer something different that you kind of go like, all right, I could see us entering one of those periods where, over the next 2 to 3 years, we have 5 different champs.
Yeah.
That seems like something I can imagine. And having Usman as part of that, as kind of the old dog still hanging around, the exception to the rule while we're watching the page get turned on the rest of these guys. Yeah, it does offer like an interesting narrative. We're trying to see like, okay, could he make a addendum kind of claim on welterweight greatness by maybe making a title run this late in his career? Because that's another way to do it, right? Like, that's kind of like the Michael Bisping way of making a claim to greatness, is like, you're kind of up and down like during your prime, but then when we all wrote you off and thought you didn't have a chance anymore, you found a way to get it done. So it's like, we've seen crazier things. And Usman sat around, maybe somebody else gets hurt, somebody falls out of a fight, he's the guy that you can call and say yes, so you can sell a fight just based on what he's done in the past. And who knows, maybe he has a great night and he does it. Like, that does introduce an element of fun there. So it is nice to kind of like have him back in the picture. It also just seems to me like, to be sitting there right now and going, I'm waiting for them to call me for that title shot. You might be waiting a long time, man. And at his age, I don't know if he has that luxury to be able to do that. Plus, it's just like, whatever you think you've done to this point that should carry over to get you to the front of the line now, I think it's been too long, especially when we're talking about this from a sales perspective, that we're trying to convince people to buy your fights. And there's going to be a lot of people where they weren't really around for the top Kamaru Usman moments necessarily. They want to see Shavkat that boy good. They want to see Ian Machado Gary. They want to see some of these people that they've just like feel are more present in their minds based on very recent history in the UFC. So it's fine to come out here and say, I want that title shot next, I'll take winner, but also be willing to have that bluff called.
Yeah.
And if the UFC says, we're not doing that, but we'll give you Bilal Muhammad in what could plausibly be a number 1 contender fight, take that and say thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think you want to risk having Shavkat fight him. I think that you want Shavkat to have the winner of Della Maddalena and Islam Makhachev. So I think you got those 2 fights set up, and though that could well get you through the rest of the year. I do think you have to fight either Bilal Muhammad, Sean Brady, Ian Gary, somebody like that, and then Joaquin Buckley is probably going to have to fight one of those guys too. So it'll be interesting to see how that contender race plays out. It would actually be a classic UFC move to have Shavkat Rakhmonov fight one more time against somebody like Kamaru Usman before giving him the title shot, thereby risking maybe the best thing you got coming up in the welterweight division.
Yeah.
All right. Remember, you're listening to the Co-Main Event podcast proper. This show drops every Tuesday afternoon for free in your timelines and your podcast libraries. But if you want more of Ben Folks and myself, we're over on Patreon all week long. Hit us up at patreon.com/co-main event. You just get loads and loads of extra audio and video content. And you also get access to our official Discord message board where they're talking about fights and a lot of other stuff literally all the time. Go over there, hit us up, give us a chance. Patreon.com/co-main event. We would love to have you on the team. Another great way to support the show is by going to co-mainevent.com and checking out our merchandise shop. We got t-shirts, we got hats, we got hoodies, we got lots more. You can stop by, pick up the best-selling Daddest Man on the Planet coffee mug or the Daddest Man on the Planet t-shirts that we got flying out the door right now. We got Volcomania t-shirts. We got Dundasso t-shirts, hoodies. We got Bobby Nux t-shirts. We got it all. Go over to the website, co-mainevent.com, and click the link at the top of the page that says shop. As always, we partner with our friend Johnny Ashcroft on the shop. He is a graphic designer from Portland, Oregon, and we can't recommend him highly enough for all your design needs. Hit him up at studiosuperconductor.com or on Instagram at Studio Superconductor. And right now, like we always do about this time, let's do a little bit of listener mail.
Listener mail.
Ben, it will come as no shock to you or anyone else, probably, that we got several pieces of listener mail about the controversial stoppage in the Paul Craig Rodolfo Bellato fight. Ended in a no contest after an illegal upkick by Paul Craig right before the end of the first round. So I'm not sure if I should read all three of these together or we should answer them one by one. I guess this one we got about Paul Craig, and then we can take the ones about Bellato. Shadrap wrote in to say, I like Paul Craig as much as the next guy, but how was that accidental?
Okay. I would say what we're kind of saying with accidental is he didn't realize it was a downed opponent he was kicking.
Right.
Because Paul Craig is on his back, and Bellato has been doing a thing where he's standing up and kind of punches his way down into Paul Craig's guard, and then is in the process of standing back up again, where he has one foot up and the other one's still down. And so Paul Craig probably feels that he is standing up and thinking like, all right, he's standing up so he can hit you again. And that's the time you want to kick him. And so he's kicking to both give him something to worry about, create that distance and see if he can land a shot, and maybe doesn't realize like you kicked a little bit too early, because if you'd waited half a second longer, maybe he would have been standing up. Also, though, when we go and actually look at the replay, doesn't the kick kind of hit him on the neck?
Oh, we're not going to do this, are we?
Do you see the replay of it? When you really look at the replay, the kick, like the heel hits him like kind of like on the neck, like or below the jawline.
All right, we got these two. We got these two questions. One from Devin Scott, who wrote in to say, so Bellato finally shows up to the Paul Craig fight after pulling out last time with a case of herpes.
He didn't pull out that time. That they made him pull out that time, but still a lot of personal brand stuff not going great for Rodolfo Bellato.
A sentence only possible in MMA. And sure, Craig absolutely fouled him with that upkick, no debate. But the real artistry was Bellato pausing to hit the ref with the universal what the fuck face, then collapsing like he'd been sniped from the rafters. I'm not saying we need to break out a frame-by-frame review like the Zapruder film, but it looked like some premium-grade bullshit to me. What's your read? Classic Dundasso? Or just another harmless dose of recreational outrage for those of us who didn't get the gritty Scottish finish we were hoping for? And we also got one from Jason. This one is from Jason PN and Zykel Minkus ride a tandem bicycle to brunch.
Oh, okay. Describe the situation. Really.
Yeah. He wrote in to say, so Rudy Bellator passes the what the fuck test, then milliseconds later decides to pull an Aljo. Okay, that's not fair. in
To whom?
numerous ways. There's no way he made this mental calculation on the way down to get an easy DQ win, right? Is it possible his brain got in reverse because he was concussed? Was this an acting job? Was that black and blue dress really white and gold? I don't know if we'll ever have an answer. I'm sure MMA fans will likely be on the side of Anthony Smith rather than Dom Cruz's more charitable take of having, quote, never seen such a thing. Now, Ben, folks, if he's acting here, he's overdoing it, right? The thing that most makes me feel like this was probably a legitimate situation of being stunned and or knocked out is that I don't think you would make it this demonstrative if you were trying to fake us out and pretend like this was worse than it was. Do you fall on the canvas and start convulsing and then try to pull multiple moves off on Kevin McDonald when he comes in?
See, that part I got to say this. I hate when people do the thing where we see something and we are the MMA viewing public from this safe side of the cage is always ready to assume that these professional tough guys are actually a bunch of whiny crybaby posers looking for a way out of every fight. We do that because that's how we would feel in a cage fight. It's scared and ready to get out of there. And if there's an opportunity to get a DQ win, we're going to take. And so I hate when people assume, like, as a default feeling that that's what we're seeing. But this one didn't look right to me, Chad.
I will give you that the optics looked weird, especially at the beginning. Like the thing where Bellato turns to the ref and puts his hands up like, what the hell? And then falls down on the mat. And then his head like drops to the canvas as though, as Devin Scott said, he'd been shot from the rafters. That to me did look a little out of the ordinary from what we're used to seeing. I'm just saying, if you're flopping, you would act differently. You would act like you see a soccer guy act when they flop. You would be rolling around, holding your head. Oh, no, bring out the special spray and spray it on my ankle so I can get back up and run off as if I was never hurt at all. You don't. The way he scoots back against the cage, looking like he just woke up to find himself surrounded by a pride of lions, like that. I don't know that he could fake that, man. Like,
do we see people do that in real knockouts? Not really.
Well, we see the delayed reaction knockout. We've seen guys get knocked out before and like take a couple steps on their feet before the robot realizes that someone pulled the power plug on it and it collapses. And we've seen guys wake up and try to fight the ref before. That's not really that unusual. This one went on longer than they normally do. You don't normally see a guy starting to chain together takedowns on the referee when he comes over to try to interact.
He's
but I'm just
not
saying,
here trying to do a
do
De La Hiva sweep on the referee, man, and like for an extended period of time, which that's where I was kind of like, I don't buy it, man.
Would you do that if you were trying to fake this, though? And to what end for Rodolfo Bellato? Like, it's not like he's getting his ass kicked in this fight. Like,
see, okay, that is a good argument because that's what he said, right? Like when he came out with his statement afterwards where he was like, why would I do that in a fight where I won the first round? Like it was late and it was the end of the first round and I was winning it. And you're like, yeah, that's to me is the best argument. Better than no one would make it look this fake if they were faking. Because that could be answered by just, you're bad at faking it. Faking it is harder than people think it is. And that's why it looks so bad. Because to me, it's like the fact that he looks over at the ref and then is fucking comatose.
Yeah,
when he lands.
There is
like,
that. Yeah.
Aljo, I was like, when I heard like Aljo had to comment on his YouTube page, I was like, I got to hear what he has to say because he's been on the other side of this, having been accused of like faking it when Peter Yan need him. And he described him as looking like a chalk outline in the street. Like when he went down, where he's just out, and then he's just sort of like spasming coming to, and then is the extended period of trying to hit the De La Hiva on Kevin McDonald or whatever. And it's that to me, I was like, this seems a bit much, man. And it doesn't make intellectual sense, especially it's like if the first time the fight was supposed to happen, it got called off because of your herpes, and then the next time you come in here and you're trying to milk a DQ. For one thing, if that was anybody's thinking, trying to like take advantage of an illegal strike and act like you're hurt worse than you are so that you can get a DQ, that right there is already playing with fire, because we know how they do in this sport. We know that people are not eager to give you a DQ, even if you have been fouled in a point that is going to be like fight ending, which is essentially what happened here. Like,
Right.
the most likely results are nothing fucking happens to the other guy, or something like this, like a no contest. Like, all that stuff is way more likely than you get a DQ win. So like anybody I could see if in that moment you get hit pretty good, you realize it's an illegal strike, and maybe you start out trying to play it up and you go, oh shit, now I'm committed. Now I really got to go for it here. I'm not saying like it makes a whole lot of like intellectual sense. It wouldn't be the thing I would advise somebody to do when they have absorbed that illegal strike. But it also really did not seem like the devastating knockout blow that leaves you fighting ghosts when you come 2 seconds later, you know?
It looked weird. I will gladly give up that point. But we've seen weird looking stuff in this sport. I think just
We
because it
have seen
looks
some weird
weird
stuff.
isn't a reason to make Bellato out as like a flop artist here. If he was flopping, I think the other people in his acting workshop will have some notes.
Yeah.
When he gets back, just like, you
Less
kind
is
of
more.
overdid it.
Less
Yeah.
is more, Rodolfo. Did you see Anthony Smith's comments where I was like, here's one guy where like he has a right.
Mm-hmm.
He earned it. He took that knee from John Jones and did not stay down, and probably could have gotten himself a DQ win to become UFC champion in that one, but didn't. And he came out hard. He came out being like, this is the biggest, most obvious flop I've ever seen in an MMA fight, and really went hard after Bellato on it. And I was just like, okay, as a guy who definitely did not do that when the opportunity was there to do it, maybe Anthony Smith has the right to be criticizing people that harshly. I wrote a thing about it where basically arguing, using some of the historical examples, that if there's anything we know about the way MMA works, it's that whether you did flop or didn't, you won't hear the end of it now.
No.
Because like, people, once they get that in their heads about you, regardless of how legitimate it might have been, you could become UFC champion and people are going to bring this shit up again. Like Aljo, when he was talking about it, he at one point, he seems like he realizes as soon as he starts talking about it, the YouTube comments are going to light him up. And so he's got to acknowledge that people still accuse him of doing this. And he's like rubbing his face in frustration. He's like, I can't believe we're still talking about it. And it's like, well, first of all, you're talking about it. You could have left this one alone. You're talking about it. But also, like, there's a guy who, had a good UFC championship level career, and still people are going to bring that up to him. And he knows if Bellato does not, in fact, become a UFC champion, this is the thing people are going to remember about him. Like, this sport hates a flopper, man. In other sports, it's like you flop in basketball or soccer or stuff, like, people don't love it, but at least the fans of your team will be like, well, he's trying to get one for us. Like he's doing this in service of the cause. Even if we're embarrassed by it at times, we appreciate that he's doing this to help out the team. And in MMA, people just fucking hate you if they even think you might be doing it, and nobody respects it. Nobody has a side here that they think that you are doing it in favor of, and they will never let you forget it.
If nothing else, it is an example of, in this sport, the way that we always heap the criticism and skepticism on the person who got fouled.
I mean, that's
Like,
the philosophical underpinning of Dondasso itself, right?
yeah, aside from Shadrap writing in to ask the question, nobody's talking about Paul Craig. No, nobody's talking about Paul Craig landing the illegal blow. We're all trying to suss out. We're all trying to do our detective work over here, trying to figure out if Rodolfo Bellato was flopping or not. And look, man, all due respect to Anthony Smith, I do understand that this looked weird. I don't know, man. He had the glassy look in his eye when he's over there against the cage, and they're trying to explain to him what happened. If you were trying to fake it, I feel like you would fake it in a different way. I feel like he was winning the fight through He was 1 second away from being through the first round with a 10-9 over Paul Craig. He had been waiting a while to get this fight due to the herpes. He was coming in off a draw against Jimmy Crute, and then he won 4 in a row and won on the Contender Series to even get in the UFC. I just don't see it. I don't see I don't see what's in it for Rodolfo Bellato to fake this. So I don't know. I don't know. Only he knows for sure in the dark corners of his heart. Next question this week comes to us from Darkwing Duck, who wrote in to say, Mike Perry had a bunch of former UFC stars on his second Dirty Boxing card. It looks like maybe he's trying to follow the bare knuckle strategy of finding people we still want to watch, even if we hate ourselves for it. Now he's advertising a potential title fight between Jessica Rose Clark and PVZ. And he has title in quotes here. What are the odds that Mike Perry can keep this thing together long enough to make it work? Ben, what do you think the over-under is for total Dirty Boxing cards promoted by Mike Perry?
I mean, I would need to have a better sense of what these are costing him to put on. And are we a front for a money laundering operation? Those are my two most important questions.
Well, almost certainly yes for the second one. But he's got to be laying out some bucks, right? To get the biggie boy to come in, to get Jessica Rose Clark to come in, to get some of these other Alex Caceres, some of these other UFC fighters that he had come in and fight in this thing. These aren't guys fighting in Dan Hooker's backyard. These are some professional fighters. You got to be paying them something.
Alex Caceres would fight in Dan Hooker's backyard if he was invited. He absolutely would. So I don't know. It doesn't seem to me like we're probably going to be sitting here 5 years from now talking about the big Midsummer Classic put on by Dirty Boxing. I don't get a sense that's where we're headed with this. But as if what we're doing is washing some dirty money for some kind of organized crime cabal, I say good work while you can get it, Mike Perry. That is what we're learning about mixed martial arts promotion, is like the best chance you can have for success is to have some sort of evil source of money behind you, whether that is like vast oil wealth or just like, hey, our criminal syndicate has some money and we need to make it come out clean on the other end. That's how you do it in this sport. That's what we've learned. Because we've seen people try it the other way, where they start with a bunch of money that they made selling gaudy ass flame and skull t-shirts, and you end up just with a lot less money at the end of it and a desire to never again promote another fight. The way to do it is to just be like, I'll be the front man for taking some like a fortune that is stained ethically and legally. Give it to me. I'll give some of it to the biggie boy, and we'll have a good time.
We're making a lot of accusations on this week's show.
Inferences. I would say inferences.
Accusations and innuendos are happening on this show.
Implications.
John Jones was there living his best life.
I'm just saying, if you are not the front for a money laundering operation, you should be. That would be my advice, is to do some money laundering.
I think John Jones is a part owner of this thing, if I'm not mistaken. I think John Jones has a piece of the Dirty Boxing.
Would that make you more or less confident in the scenario I outlined, where we're 5 years from now, we're talking about Dirty Boxing's Midsummer Classic?
With John Jones involved, it makes me feel like they're probably washing money for gun runners. That's where I would throw my inferences.
So the only thing we still have yet to figure out is whose dirty money is behind Dirty Boxing.
If we're going to tell a story, let's make it an interesting one.
Okay.
John Jones bringing a crate full of Chinese assault rifles back through customs from Thailand. That's what I'm talking about.
I mean, he did say his brand is making him a whole lot of money.
That's true. Next question this week comes to us from Rocksteady from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
We all remember him.
That's the Rhino, I believe.
Yeah, it's like one of the bad guy.
I think he's the mutant heavies. Rhino.
Yeah.
I took my kids to see that latest Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so that's how I remember who Rocksteady was.
How was it?
It was good. It was pretty good. Ice Cube does the voice of the main bad guy.
Of course he does.
Yeah, so I was surprised by that. Anyway, Rocksteady from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles writes in to say Cody Garbrandt showed up to UFC 316 looking like Timu Sean O'Malley and lost his fight. Then I saw O'Malley on Helwani say this, quote, "It was annoying when I saw his hair was braided and he's got those face tattoos. I was like, oh, that's how people see me. It was just so embarrassing. I need to fucking get a new look. That was embarrassing. I was like, holy shit, that was an eye-opener. If O'Malley contacted CME Consulting Services, what would you recommend for his new look?"
First of all, I love the honesty and awareness that Sean O'Malley is the guy who will just say this to you, who will just be like, because that's got to be a hard thing to admit that I was watching a Cody Garbs fight on a UFC fight night after, my shit didn't go well. And when I saw him, I went, oh, I look like a clown to these people, bro. Like,
it's also a clever backhanded compliment or backhanded insult at Cody Garbs.
Yeah, there's no compliment about it at all.
It's an insult. It's a forehanded insult.
I appreciate, though, his willingness to come right out and tell us this. I say my advice to Sean O'Malley is we go full Don Draper.
Okay. Skinny tie, is that what we're talking about?
We're doing a real upstanding citizen from the 50s kind of look where we're slicking the hair back, we're getting a real conventional men's haircut there, and we're showing up to all these press events just crisp white shirt, dark solid color tie, sport coat, looking like we're going to work on Madison Avenue in 1962. Like that's people are expecting you to zig, you zag. You know what I'm saying?
I was going to say the obvious answer is corporate Sean O'Malley, right? Which is sort of the same thing, but you briefcase in it, suit and tie. Maybe you bring a stack of papers with you everywhere you go that, with your important facts and figures from the office that you brought with you. That's seems like the way to go with O'Malley.
Yeah. I mean, for one thing, think maybe face tattoos can make that transition a little tough, but I feel like, you know what? Just when people think they have all the answers, that's when you got to change the questions.
I like it. I like it. All right. Next question this week comes to us from Aljamain Plumbum, who writes, I live in the suburbs of Chicago and have never been to a live UFC event. When the news came out that UFC 319 was coming to Chicago, I definitely committed myself to going. When I told my 8-year-old I was going, he got excited and asked to come. I already feel guilty that I don't spend enough time with him due to work commitments, and he's on summer vacation. UFC events always seem super child unfriendly due to the nature of the sport and the crowd, so I never contemplated bringing him to the event before. Give me your thoughts as two dads of a certain age.
Yeah.
He's going to be exposed to some things.
Yeah.
If you bring him. You just have to know that going in.
Yeah, it's not like bringing an 8-year-old to a baseball game, It's not even like bringing an 8-year-old to like a playoff NFL game or something. It's a different sort of vibe. I'll say this. I wouldn't do it, but that's me. But it also is hard because if he got excited and wants to come, it's hard to imagine telling him, no, Dad's going, you stay your ass here.
Yeah.
That's tough.
I think it depends largely on the 8-year-old.
Yeah.
Like how worldly is the 8-year-old, right? Is the 8-year-old going to be blown away by hearing some swears and, maybe seeing some people who have imbibed a few soda pops? Is he going to be horrified by the violence as he watched MMA with you before?
Can he sit there through 6 hours?
That's also what I was going to say. Like, if this shit is going to cost you if it's going to cost you like $100 for a ticket, how long do you think your 8-year-old is going to sit there? Like, will not take either of my sons to a college football game here in Missoula. It costs like $60 for a ticket, and I know my kids are going to want to leave after like 15 minutes. So that so far has been my my calculus on that. I will say, like, if my kids were interested in the UFC and had watched it before and were kind of up to speed on what it was and tickets were affordable, I wouldn't have too many problems bringing them.
Yeah. I also think, okay, so we're in Chicago. The main card isn't gonna even start until what, 9 p.m. local time in
That's
Chicago?
another good consideration. And again, doesn't it just kind of depends on the 8-year-old, right?
Yeah, you're gonna really wanna have for your money, you wanna make sure that you see the main event. You could say, like, we're not gonna go for every single prelim because I know the clock's ticking on bringing a child to an event, but even then, you're looking at it's gonna be midnight by the time you get around to the main event, and is he gonna be hanging in there? Also, it's like it's just super loud in there, like, I just you're right that it does depend on the 8-year-old, because I know when I think about either one of my daughters, but especially the youngest who is 10, so she was 8 more recently, I can kind of think about, like, for one thing, she would not express excitement and want to go,
Right.
but also she did go, like, it would just be overwhelming from like a sensory aspect and just from the the huge crowds of people yelling at each other, spilling beer on each other, and possibly fighting each other. Like, how many UFC events you've been to where there's been at least one fight, in the
Almost
crowd?
every one I've ever been to.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would advise against it, although I also definitely relate to this thing where it's like, hey, would they actually express interest in one of the things you're interested in and the thing you could do together? And then, yeah, in summer, trust me, I'm dealing with it right now. My kids got out of school last week, and already it's a thing where they're just kind of sitting around the house, and I'm like, I gotta get some work done, but also, like, I see you guys are bored, but there's only so much I can do for you, so I get it. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I might suggest a different activity that we could do.
Yeah, I'm not going to say hard no, because I think it depends on the kid, but I think you need to have a very specific set of circumstances to make this plausible.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for listener mail this week. If you have a question, comment, or concern that you want to air to the podcast in future weeks, you know how to do it. Hit us up at comainevent.com and then click the link in the top right-hand corner of the screen that says email the podcast. That'll get you in touch with us. As for right now, the UFC off to Azerbaijan. We will talk about that right after this. Well, Ben, when the UFC rolled into 2025, I don't know about you, but when I started to consider potential international locations for fight night events, I was not like, well, Azerbaijan is the obvious choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is sort of like UFC on ABC, Hill versus Roundtree. Where now?
Mm-hmm.
Where are we going?
Baku.
Azerbaijan? Baku? Azerbaijan? That's where we're going? Really?
Yeah. And it does, again, seem to suggest that the UFC will take any motherfucker's money if they giving it away.
It does, doesn't it? Because there's no other reason to go to Azerbaijan,
No,
right?
there's not. There's not like, well, we see this as a huge emerging market where we have a ton of fans. It's not like we have, a champion who we're bringing there to really have like his homecoming moment. It's something like that. It is, however, another one where we are not even a little bit concerned about whose money we're taking and whether they are good people or not. I'm going to read to you a page from the Azerbaijan entry on the Human Rights Watch website. The Azerbaijani government remains hostile to dissenting voices, targeting government critics and political opponents with dubious charges, undermining its stated commitments to reforms. In previous years, the authorities released numerous activists imprisoned on politically motivated and bogus charges, but dozens of others remain wrongfully imprisoned. Restrictive laws continue to impede non-governmental organizations from operating independently. Other persistent human rights problems include systemic torture and ill treatment in custody and restrictions on media freedoms. Domestic violence against women is also a serious problem, and the government has yet to ratify or even sign the Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence. While the European Union has signed a deal with Azerbaijan aimed at increasing the country's gas exports to Europe, it failed to set conditions for future cooperation that will help secure rights improvements. And then there's a whole bunch of links to stories about journalists being jailed in Azerbaijan. So things don't seem like we're exactly loving freedom over there. Now, there's a lot you could say about many countries that don't seem to be doing great right now in some of those regards, including our own United States government. But it also seems like the UFC is like some governments just like, hey, we have an iron-fisted control of our country, and we would like to give some of our money to you to come do a little bit of the old sports washing. We've seen how well that works for other people. Come over here, put on a show, tell everybody how great we are, shots of people coming out of the mouth of the cobra, going down the water slide, all that kind of stuff. And the UFC is just like, immediately, yes, automatically. Sure, we will be happy to do that for you. There's no concern that maybe we're partnering up with the bad guys on this.
Oh, if there's one thing we can say without hesitation, it's that the UFC does not care about that at all.
Yeah.
They are not worried about partnering up with the bad guys, as you said, as long as there is some money in it for them. Now, here's the thing. I could not have told you where Azerbaijan was previous to this. Now I see Baku, potentially a seaside town on the Caspian Sea. So maybe they do have some water slides where you come out the mouth of a king cobra snake. I don't know, but this is the first time I personally have heard of a major event going down in Azerbaijan that I would potentially be interested in. So it's possible that they have more to gain or wash than some of the other countries that we've, at least we know why you might go to some of these vacation destinations in the Middle East, right? We know why you do that. Azerbaijan is not a place that had ever entered my mind before I found out the UFC was going. So perhaps if I was of a different persuasion politically, this would start to interest me in it. I can say that what is it? The Crystal Palace, is that where we're going in Baku? It's the Baku Crystal Hall Arena that looks like a race of disco aliens just touched down. Like
it does look pretty dope, honestly.
Yeah, it looks like this is a spaceship, and all of the aliens that came out of it would look like David Bowie from Ziggy Stardust. Like that is who's flying this. But yeah, and you know what? This is an obvious cash grab, right? Like this isn't like, we could see maybe why you're going to go to Abu Dhabi, right? Where we've heard lots of not very flattering reports about how those stadiums get built over there in Abu Dhabi. You could see why you might want to go to Saudi Arabia, especially if you're in the business of taking money. Azerbaijan ain't no reason to go unless you're making a pretty penny in the site fees and everything else.
It also, though, like when you start to imagine what we're probably going to be doing in exchange for the money when we go over there, like how that's probably going to influence the broadcast, and that there's going to be at least some mentions on the broadcast about how rad Azerbaijan is. You guys should all check out Azerbaijan. Like that reminds me again that increasingly one of the worst things about just sitting through the UFC product is how much bullshit they expect you to swallow. Because it's not enough to just be like, hey, the UFC is, when you're not looking, supporting these right-wing causes. And like, I don't know if you saw, Dana White was at Trump's military parade, and the UFC was mentioned.
He was the one?
The UFC was mentioned like as a sponsor at this thing. And then when the New York Times had a thing where they said they reached out to the UFC to be like, you guys sponsored this military parade, and a UFC communications liaison said, no, we didn't. Dana White just went and did that personally. The UFC as a company did not do it, but they sure were using the UFC's name around a lot. And so it's like, it's one thing if that was just the only thing that was happening, and if you knew, then you knew. But it's like you turn on a UFC broadcast and they are shoving it down your fucking throat as much as they possibly can. And then they're going to go and do this where they're just like, hey, and another like pro-torture like repressive government gave us some money to come over there and pretend that they're good guys. So here we're doing it. We're pretending they're good guys, and we're making you sit through us telling you they're good guys when everybody knows they're not. And it's just like, that seems to be such a consistent thing in one way or another that you can't get away from on UFC broadcasts. And I know they are losing people this way. You're not gaining anybody this way. It just seems that the UFC has decided the number of people we're losing with this shit is negligible and the money is worth it.
Yeah.
And but it does not seem like a long-term, like a thinking kind of prospect.
Dana White is like uniquely positioned in sports to be the one guy that you cannot claim that your company is backing his trip to the military parade, right? Like you can say that Dana White went there of his own personal accord to attend the military parade on behalf of his buddy DJT, but like when Dana White does something, the UFC does it, right? Because that's how you have positioned him in your company going back 20 years. He's not a direct parallel to like the commissioner of the NBA or the commissioner of the NFL. And BT Dubs, you would never see those fucking guys turn up at this thing for that exact reason. And Dana White is more intricately woven into the fabric of the UFC than either of those dudes are in his sport. So you can't be like, I don't know, man, Dana White went to do this thing by himself, and it's just coincidentally we've given the president his own fucking walkout music at our event. So we didn't have anything to do with it, man. That was all Dana. Unfortunately, where he goes also goes the UFC brand.
Right, and which makes sense since they have made him so much of the brand, like that instead of pushing individual fighters too hard, the thing that they have always pushed is Dana White. And so then, when he shows up and he's doing this stuff, they also mentioned in the New York Times story, there's like, he was there because he's got an energy drink now with like Anheuser-Busch. Like Dana White has an energy drink, and that's somebody was mentioning at the pay-per-view just the other week. He was late getting there because he spent Saturday afternoon at some event promoting his energy drink. And again, it's just like, how do you manage to be so disinterested in your fight promotion, in your $1 billion fight company? How is it that just fails to keep your attention? How is it everything else, every shiny object you see, that's the thing that you want to chase after? And it's not like you need the money. Like, I don't understand. Why don't you just stay home and be good at this?
I mean, if anything, it seems like Dana White is just as disinterested in the Endeavor TKO-led product that is the UFC as many of the fans are, right? Like his buddies don't own this thing anymore. He's not just hanging out with Frank and Lorenzo, going to UFC events and flying private jets to Brazil and stuff like that. He's got, technically he's got bosses. He works under like a corporate structure now, even though they have taken the official position that he can just do whatever he wants as long as the giant fire hose that sprays money keeps spraying money. But he seems like he's got the same attitude as the rest of us. Just sort of like, oh, this shit's bland now. I don't even need to show up for most of these things. I am more interested in the slappity slap and my energy drink and all this other stuff I've got. So he's got one foot out the door. That's how it seems to me. Like he's just looking for the next thing.
Yeah, it does feel that way.
Feels weird to transition into Jamal Hill versus Khalil Roundtree after that discussion, but that is your light heavyweight main event here at the UFC on ABC from Azerbaijan. Those guys will punch each other. That's going to be fun.
They will punch each other. That is a thing that we have been led to believe. It does seem like style-wise, you're probably going to get a pretty good fight, a pretty exciting fight out of that one. Did you see Khalil Roundtree's custom shorts for this?
Yeah, they're kind of awesome.
I'm into it.
It is rare that you see the custom shorts job and you think that's awesome, but Yeah, those ones are awesome.
Awesome, and they seem kind of fitting for him. And like that we actually took some time to get a little creative with it. And it just every time I see like the rare instance of those kind of popping up, and I go, remember when this was the promise all along? This was the promise back in the Reebok deal where they came out with the Reebok stuff and they're like, yeah, we're going to work with the athletes to give them their own signature kind of look. And that never fucking happened. It's just so slowly, incrementally happened for just a few fighters here and there. And every time you see something like this and you're like, this is cool. If you had been doing more of this for more of the fighters, that would have also been cool.
It is. They've set a very low bar. Right. So now when they do absolutely anything, when they make Khalil Roundtree some cool shorts, when they go pull off a big event at the Sphere, it does feel it's like your stoner delinquent son mowed the lawn. Right. And you're like, God damn, Josh, look at the great job you did on the lawn, man. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, his brother is like straight A student, right? Probably the captain of the football team. Danny does something nobody cares. Because you expect Danny to do a good job. Josh mows the lawn, all of a sudden you give him $20.
That is all too apt an analogy.
That's going to do it this week for the Co-Main Event podcast. Remember, we're over at the Patreon page all week long. Hit us up, patreon.com/co-main event. We got the live chat coming up tomorrow. You still got time to go join the Patreon, slam down a question, whatever it is. Ben Folks and I we're almost duty bound to answer it.
Yep.
If you're going to go over there and support the show, interact with the people, we'd love it if you would. Patreon.com/co-main event. As for right now, we are done. We are through. We are out. I'll tell you this. I can almost think of nothing I would be more troubled by to find in the possession of my children than Dana White's energy drink. Who the fuck is drinking Dana White's energy drink?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if I find them with some Logan Paul ass shit, I'll be like, you know what? At least it's not the Dana White energy drink.
Well, yeah, they've been led to believe Logan Paul is cool, just with their everyday, ordinary YouTube consumption. Dana White, that's a different dude, man. Dana White is like a 50-year-old bald dude that. If he was managing to trick my kids into drinking his energy drink is called Form Energy drink, spelled PHORM, Form Energy. It contains 0 sugar, electrolytes, and caffeine from green tea extract. Comes in 4 flavors. Oh man, grape, orange, blue, and.
No, there's not calling a flavor blue.
Oh, man, you have no fucking idea. Wait, what I'm about to lay on you right now. The last flavor of Form Energy drink is, quote, Screamin' Freedom, a mix of blueberry, cherry, and citrus.
Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out.
Screamin' Freedom.